Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Stryd Power Podcast. As always, my name is Evan. Today we are doing another episode with our Stryd ambassadors. Today I am joined by Bela Runs. How are you doing today?
Hey, Evan, I'm doing great.
Thanks so much for coming on. I am really looking forward to hearing all about how you got into running and how you first started using Stryd and hearing all about your running journey. Just as a reminder to people, this is going to be part of a multiple episode series with our Stryd ambassadors where we get to sort of do a beginning, middle, end about their training journey with Stryd. The thing that I always get most excited by is hearing about how other runners got into running and started running. So if I could pose that as the first question, how did you get into running? What does your running history kind of look like?
I actually started running with my dad when I was 10 years old, and we'd get dressed up in our running clothes, which look much different than, than they do now. We'd get dressed up, we'd drive to the park and run together, maybe a 5K or a little bit more. And we ran together for years. And later I joined the track team in junior high, and I was terrible. I was like the worst one. But I liked it. Like there was a real joy and peace, and I realized that I liked the longer runs. I took my 20s off of basically everything, and then found running again in my 30s, and have been running a bit since then.
Do you feel like that experience maybe in junior high and like growing up set some expectations for you when you came back to running, or did you feel like there was maybe a difference when you started running, back later in life after taking, some of those years off? Do you feel like you came back to it with the expectations that, oh, I got to go out and, do the organized practice and stuff like that? Or do you feel like you had a different type of viewpoint as you came back to running?
I think as a kid, it was just running for fun. They were junk miles with no expectations. Uh, if you measured a run, it was with a pedometer that
Mm-hmm.
used to flop up and down on your belt, like you'd clip it onto your pants. So you really didn't have anything for accuracy back then. It was just running.
Mm-hmm.
But then in my 30s, when I went back, I was using Nike Run Club on an iPod, and you plugged in a receiver on the iPod, and you had a chip on your shoe, which is funny because I think the Stryd foot pod, I've gone full circle now back with the pod on my shoe. But then in my 30s, as an analyst, I'm obsessed with data, and I was so excited to have a way to measure my runs and plan them out and find maybe benefits or PRs, or maybe I went a little bit longer one day, and that's something you didn't have in the beginning. So I think the data maybe drove me to be more organized and have a plan. And I mean,
Yeah,
obviously technology has evolved since then, thank goodness.
that's interesting to me, because if you're data oriented and coming back into running after taking some time off, what was your general training structure? You mentioned the Nike Run Club app, and then running, with an iPod, and now everybody has what it seems like, GPS watch, or they have different apps that they use and stuff like that. But what was the general training structure for you when you were coming back to running, and how did you feel about that structured training?
So this is a little bit cringy, but all of my runs were junk miles, and I ran every run at the same pace, which
Mm.
I thought was a fast pace.
Hmm.
And if I was training for a race, maybe I needed a half marathon, I would just start increasing the miles. It was only about the number of miles, so I would feel comfortable at the starting line that I knew I could do that many. But my heart rate was always maxed.
Hmm.
My pace was always as fast as it could go. And I generally didn't feel good after these runs. I was worn out, tired. It's ultimately like non-productive and unproductive, as Garmin would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't have any idea that I needed to have slower runs. I didn't do speed work. I knew it existed. I just didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically just ran those miles, and on race day, I would try to go faster than the last time.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel like having those guides as like pace and heart rate, and then trying to like run as fast as you could comfortably or semi uncomfortably every single day? Did you feel like that was rewarding, or did you just feel like that was like the easiest sort of thing to default to? Because I feel like a lot of people, before they find some sort of training plan structure that has variety or has recovery days, but then also intense days, some longer runs, some shorter runs and stuff, it just maybe isn't in the front of your mind to have that variation and stuff. Did you just feel like it was maybe easier to default to those sort of faster runs every single day?
I think I just didn't even know there was an alternative to it. It
Mm.
never crossed my mind that I should ever run slower because I thought it might bring my pace down on race day.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see the benefit. And I run because I love to run. And maybe that is how I reconnect from those runs of my childhood, that I just love it. And I check out into my own world, and it's the joy of running that gets me out there every day. But I don't think the runs were as good as they can be now because I was tired and used up all of the time with the junk mile fast method.
Right. I feel like the next groundbreaking metric in the running world is quantifying the joy that you have when you're out there running
Yeah.
and stuff. And whoever can crack that is going to be the forefront industry leader. Were you training for specific races? You mentioned getting to start line for like a half marathon and then trying to run faster on race day. What was your approach to finding races or races you were targeting at that time?
Honestly, I loved my hometown race, the Gasparilla.
Mhm.
There was a full marathon in 2008. I did do that race as my first full. And actually, this is terrible. It was only my third race I had ever done, and it was a full marathon. So you probably know how that went. But I did it. But I did it, and I loved it. And that was the last year they did the full. And I've done 21 half marathons. Um, Probably 10 of them were at Gasparilla.
Mhm.
So every year, that was just the plan to go do that Gasparilla half marathon. And I love, like, I grew up on those streets. I know the course so well. And I just would show up on race day and try to do better than I did the previous year.
Mhm.
And of course, there's ebbs and flows with training and life and injuries and kids and everything. But that was just the goal, just to try to do better.
Mhm. Do you feel like you enjoyed the sense of comparison you could make knowing that you had a sort of like similar course and you knew what to expect when it came to race day? There was no surprises about like, oh, I have to go here and there's a hill I wasn't expecting and stuff. But to have that hometown race that you can do that seems like a good, reliable goal to target each and every year. Was that maybe a driver behind running that race just because it was a sense of like normalcy in a training and racing schedule?
But definitely, I would have last year's finish time in my head or the PR in my head. And you have your course PR and your overall PR. But currently, my overall PR is on that course.
Mm.
But Tampa, the weather varies quite a bit. That race can be 40 or 50 degrees or
Mhm.
80 degrees.
Right.
So sometimes that plays a role too, but I'm obsessed with the data. I look at my pace, I look at the weather. Now with the Stryd data, I'm looking at my heart rate and other things to compare to.
Mhm. That is interesting and a perfect segue, actually, too. So you had the history growing up, going out for easy runs at the park. You had the sort of competitive atmosphere growing up in school too. Took a little bit of time off, came back to it, used apps like the Nike Run Club, and then you started training for halves. fulls, even if it was your third race. So obviously not shy to try a bunch of different things. And you just mentioned running with Stryd. What was your experience maybe hearing about Stryd for the first time, and what maybe push you over the edge to give it a try or convince you to lean a little bit more into that side of the data?
So I had a little bit of downtime. 2020 was my year of running, I think. I was working from home, so I had a little bit more free time. And that was always what I said kept me from running more, is that I didn't have the time. And by the fall of 2020, I was training for an ultra marathon. And I was following a Hal Higdon plan, but following it miles wise with no easy runs, really. And that plan has back-to-back long runs,
Right.
maybe 20 miles on a Saturday and 10 on a Sunday, or vice versa, to get you used to running on tired legs.
Right.
But really, not every runner is created equal, probably. You know, I'm a woman, maybe I'm older, maybe I have calcium issues, iron issues, sleep, you name it. But I was out there trying to do everything that plan said with no variation. And I broke. I fractured my sacrum. And really, it's because I didn't give my body any time to rest. Maybe if all of the runs weren't so intense, I could have gotten away with it. If those runs were at easy pace, now I see, like, by watching my running stress balance, that you can add more easy miles, and you can add a lot before it makes a difference. But I learned when I broke my sacrum and had a lot of free time to just browse on Instagram, look at my friends that are still out there doing things. I saw people using Stryd, and I had all of the time in the world to read about it, to go to the website, to research. I joined the Facebook group, and I could see day to day people telling their experience of, you know, this was the Stryd race prediction, and this is what I had, which was something else that fascinated me. When you know that you want to PR on race day, you know what pace you need to run, but you don't know if you can maintain a pace for that amount of time. Like, can I run a 10-minute mile for 2 hours? But with Stryd, you actually do know, because you've got the proof in your data. So I thought, you know, this Stryd is going to help me learn to run fast when I need to, but also keep me easy on the easy days. And so far, that's the biggest challenge with it, to not go too fast. And I've tried different things on my watch. I've had it set up to vibrate, to beep. Now, like, I'll look at my watch, and I know what the effort feels like, and I pretty much get it right most of the time. And I'll just check on it maybe once every 2 or 3 minutes. But I wanted the Stryd to help keep me out of trouble, to monitor my power, to make sure that my runs have a purpose, that they're not just junk, and they're not going to injure me. And I know if I do what it says, I'll be okay. And my running stress balance is proof of that.
It's so interesting to me because, like we were talking about earlier, usually every single runner that goes out there runs at that moderate, that kind of gray zone intensity where it's not super specific to, running close to a threshold workout or a critical power workout, like faster. It's not slow enough to promote that recovery and, exactly like you say, lower that running stress, but let you stack a ton of volume there. But it's almost harder to do the hard workouts and the easy workouts than to do everything in the middle. And that's kind of exactly what you're saying too. Did you find yourself trying Stryd training plans? Did you just tack, Stryd on your shoe and hook it up to your watch and just kind of do what you were doing? What was your kind of experience leaning into incorporating running power and kind of your mindset shifting into that?
I jumped right into a training plan. I did the 2-week introduction, and I I did, actually, what I really liked about it is that it's flexible, that you can move the runs on your calendar to have, your runs on specific days of the week.
Hmm.
And maybe it took me a little bit longer than the first 10 days. But I loved it because I'm a data-oriented person. I'm a planner. I love how the training plan goes into the Stryd calendar, and that I pull it in on my watch, and it's
Hmm.
just like easy and right there. No, but I'm definitely a training plan person.
Yeah, and when you're suggested or told, "Hey, here's what you should do. Here's why you should do it," it's specific to you, based on that past data and stuff. It's almost reassuring, and it makes you not have to guess. And it's the same sort of mindset you were talking about heading into race day. Why would you ever guess about how hard you should run? But when you can do that every single day and say, "Oh, I know the exact intensity I should run," that's a very welcome thing in running. I feel like. So you mentioned you dove right in to a Stryd training plan. Are you following one right now? And do you have a goal race that you're training for right now?
Yes, actually, I'm on my first 10K training plan. I've done the marathon and half marathon in the past,
Hmm.
and 10K is not my usual distance. I think I'm a longer, slower runner, but I've done more 5Ks the past 2 years because after COVID, I just wanted any race I could get my hands on.
Hmm.
And 5K, like, okay, you can run fast, but for that distance. 10K, I want to run almost as fast, but for twice the distance. And that's not something I've figured out yet.
Hmm.
So I'm really excited. I'm using this 10K plan for the Rap River Run, which is coming up in June.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so I'm hoping to PR at this race. I haven't got a lot of 10Ks under my belt, but it's
What
looking good so far.
Yeah, what's your experience and maybe some of the main differences you notice between marathon? Because the marathon, half marathon, it is a significant distance. I would argue that 13 miles is a long run for pretty much everybody, and 26 miles is typically the longest run people do unless you're training specifically for an ultra. But exactly like you mentioned, 5K, it's that short fast, feeling where you can hurt, but you can hurt for a manageable amount of time. 10K, you're backing off just
Right.
slightly, and you're holding your hand on the stove almost for the whole race. What is your experience so far in noticing the differences between those types of plans, whether it's easy days, workouts, long runs? What's your kind of experience with that?
So the long run, like the half marathon, where you just maybe maybe you're present for the first 3 miles, and then you just mentally check out
Hmm.
and run, and maybe a mile or so before the end, you see what you've got left in the bank and you
Hmm.
go for it. 10K is so much different to me. Uh, like for a 5K, you're going to stay present and you're going to be watching your pace
Right.
constantly. For 10, I mean, you can't do that the entire time. For me, it's about an hour. You
Hmm.
cannot do that for a whole hour,
Hmm.
but you have to have a plan and know how fast that effort is.
Right.
And check in, but maybe not as often as you would in a 5K to
Right.
keep going.
Right.
So it is a real challenge for me. I think it's harder for me to pull off this fast 10K than to do a fast five or a half.
Hmm. How many weeks are you into the plan right now? You mentioned your goal race is in June. Have you found the weeks that you're in so far to be enjoyable in the sort of difference in the workouts initially?
I'm actually just now getting to the fun stuff. I
Mm.
started my plan a little bit early, um, just because of where a half marathon ended and where the 10K race was on my schedule. And I
Mhm.
didn't want to have nothing. So I went ahead and started the 10K and just stretched it out to be a little bit longer.
Mhm.
So I think I'm around day 25.
Mhm.
And the first few weeks that it added were mostly base miles. And of course, it doesn't take into account I just ran a half marathon. It needs, it's giving me something as if I were starting from the beginning.
Mhm.
And I do add a little bit of volume on those easy runs where I can fit them in, where it's not going to compromise my productivity or my running stress balance. But right now, I just did a time trial and I'm getting to the strides. I love strides.
Mhm.
That's like a game to me. And actually, I configured my watch where I don't let it bother me on my critical power unless, actually, I have it display when it's out of range,
Mhm.
the green and the red, or the blue and the red. But when I'm changing in my intervals, I have it set up to vibrate. So I feel my watch vibrate. It counts down from 5 to 1. I see what's coming up. And I can actually see it in the Stryd app, which is amazing because I don't run with glasses on. But I'll run that and I know I don't have to look at my watch. Maybe I'll glance to make sure I'm not running too fast for it. And then I can just focus on running fast and safely, not trip over anything or whatever, because sometimes these intervals are intense and I'm going really fast for my body.
Right.
And then I don't have to even worry about it until I feel my watch vibrate again. And then I know I've got 5 more seconds of that. And then
Mhm.
I've got to really, really slow down
Right.
where it feels like ridiculously slow down. And then it's like, okay,
Mhm.
like
Were
it's fun
the
though.
Yeah, were the strides, so you mentioned it's like a game, and I honestly feel the exact same way. The experience I love is the exact same thing you're talking about, where you get that countdown, and it almost feels like a mini race experience when
Yeah.
you're in training and you're like, okay, start line, finish line. I know I just have, yeah, 5 more seconds once that watch vibrates and stuff. Do you feel yourself getting more comfortable and finding enjoyment out of those like shorter, more intense sessions? If it would be something you might not have incorporated in the past type of training plans, do you feel yourself enjoying that faster, higher velocity
I
running?
love the speed work days. I
Yeah.
really do. I look forward to them. I had one this week and I was questioning whether or not I should do it because I had a long run 2 days before. I had a road trip where I was driving for 6 hours. My legs were tired. They felt like lead. And I had like 4 hours of sleep,
Hmm.
struggling with sleep issues too. Uh, but I had this run on the calendar and I know I could have rescheduled it, but I thought these strides today are going to make me feel better and have a good day. And I went out there and I did that. And I mean, it was the greatest thing. Like it boosts your mood and you feel like you feel used up at the end. Like you're done, but it's such a good tired that you
Right.
have at the end of those
It's a
rides.
purposeful amount of intensity that's almost like the perfect amount to deplete you a little bit, but then also give you that confidence for the next time you do it, you can
Yeah.
do the exact same sort of thing. So you like the strides. Is there any other type of workout that is your favorite, or a workout in the Stryd workout library, or a workout from past training plans that you like? What's your go-to sort of workout that you really enjoy?
I mean, it's got to be strides and intervals, but I do want to mention I love the time trials. Those
Mm,
are very exciting, and they push me. They push me to run faster than I would run in training, just to see if I can increase my critical power, and I get that boost too. And then like it helps me overall have an accurate percentage of my critical power going forward.
mhm.
So yeah, I do try to throw those in here and there.
Yeah,
And I mean, they act like speed work for me too in my plan.
totally. Do you feel like it's also maybe a little bit of that mental workout where if, you're doing a normal training plan and it's 12 weeks long, you start off like you mentioned, usually people do a goal race, take a couple weeks easy and then start another training plan, but their goal race is so far out. It's 3 or 4 months down the road, and you don't get that sort of scenario where you almost have that starting line, finishing line. Like a time trial is supposed to not necessarily be all out, but it is supposed to be a fitness check and it's supposed to
Yeah.
make you feel confident and stuff. Do you feel like that mental strain and that mental workout is helpful too to make you feel confident that you can do a hard effort in
Oh,
training and then get to
absolutely.
the start line?
Yeah, absolutely, because you might lose your fitness in between,
Hmm.
or at least think you did.
Right. Right.
And that's a confidence booster that it's still there.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned being able to look down at your watch and see blue, green, or red, or have the vibration. What is your watch setup or your running setup when you're out there running? Do you have a specific type of watch you use, and do you have a specific setup that you're using with Stride?
So I have the Garmin Fenix 6S, and you'll probably see this on Instagram sometimes. I have a bling ring around the bezel with the little
Mm.
jewels on it. So you have to look for that. So when I'm doing intervals or stride training or something where there's multiple laps and different things going on, I use the Stride app in my Garmin.
Mm.
And I prefer that. The numbers are big. I can see them. I can understand it. I'll load those workouts. I'll fetch them. I'll view it just so I know what I'm getting into. Sometimes you'll do a training where it's like 18 laps and you're like, oh my God, like what is this? And maybe it's 18 minutes of easy to warm you up,
Hmm.
and then like 8 sets of a minute on or off, and then whatever change to get you to run home easy to recover, actually even easier. So I like the Stride app for that. I've experimented with different settings where I used to have it beep, and I think beeping isn't good because I run with my music and I
Hmm.
don't necessarily hear it. Vibrating was good, but then I was having it vibrate when I went out of range. And in the
Mm.
beginning, I was always out of range.
Mm.
Like it was just I had to train myself to run slow enough to not blow the top end of that. So I have it set up where I feel the vibration when I'm changing, from lap to lap,
Hmm.
where it'll tell me it's coming, it'll tell me what's coming up and when to start it, and in between. And I just visually look for the cues to see if it's red, if I'm going too fast, if it's blue, if I'm going too slow. And there are certain parts of my run where I know that I always violate my ranges when I'm running up a hill. But I'm
Right.
like, whatever, I'm going to be running down that hill in a minute. Like it's okay. It's not the end of the world. I check the average lap power in the bottom right corner against, that top range number of the critical power on the
Mhm.
right, just to make sure. Like you can violate it a little bit here and there, but I try to stay in the range. So I like that it's flexible with that. But the Stride app is my go-to anytime there are different things to do.
Right.
If I'm just running an easy recovery run, where I know, and I'll look on my Stride calendar and see I just need to do, an easy few miles. I might just use the Garmin run function where I've added that number from my Stride critical power. It's the top field on my watch and I can see it. The craziest thing is I don't usually see my pace and I don't care. Like it doesn't really matter as much to me anymore. Maybe I want to know the distance, so I turn around and don't do too many miles, but
Mhm.
pace is a number that I removed.
Do you feel like that was a change you were expecting, or was that something that
No,
you weren't even thinking would be possible?
no, it's crazy. And it actually, the whole different paces still blows my mind that you can train slow and do good on race day. And I was just telling a friend, recently after a race, like most of my training runs were above 10-minute miles. They were 10s, they were 11s. Some days they were even 12s. But I still ran a 9:30 pace on race day. And how can you train so long and so slow, but still bring it at the race? And actually, that's everything to me because I'm not risking getting hurt during my training.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I want to ask now too, you've mentioned it a couple times, so I think I might know your leading answer, but do you have a favorite part of the Stride ecosystem, whether that's the mobile app or the web-based power center or your watch, a favorite feature that you like to
Oh,
look at?
So you do know the answer to this because I'm obsessed with the running stress balance
Hmm.
because I really need to see what impact these runs are having on my body. Sometimes I use them to see, can I get away with adding a little bit of mileage to this run? Like I see some things on my calendar, but I feel like I can do a little bit more. Or maybe I just need a mental health run. I need to run a little bit longer. It's not unusual for me to just pull like last Monday, I decided I needed to run a half marathon after work
Hmm.
because I had a really crazy work day. So I saw it, it didn't look like it was going to destroy me based on my running stress balance. I did it and I adjusted my week after that to account for it. But at least I had some numbers going in
Hmm.
and it wasn't just, completely crazy going out there to do it.
Hmm. If you had a friend that you were talking to about the same exact thing and they were asking you to elaborate a little bit on running stress balance and maybe how you feel about it, how would you explain to them it's different than just tracking maybe your weekly mileage? Because the example that I always love to give is that, I could run a 10-mile easy run, right? Or I could run 10 times 1 mile repeat at my 10K intensity, and it's the same mileage, it's the same volume. But obviously, everybody knows that that intensity is
Yeah.
so different. So, how would you maybe explain to a friend that they should consider thinking about that stress that they're putting on their body and how running stress balance might give them a little bit more of that information?
That's a hard one because visually seeing it in the graph,
Hmm.
it's very easy to understand.
Sure.
I know that you can basically run an easy run forever, not forever, but really, really, really far
Hmm.
before it starts impacting your running stress balance. And you do see how high the number is in your training plan. When you're doing speed work, you'll have that number, like it's estimating for that particular workout what it's going to do. Um, but knowing that you only have to do 1 or maybe 2 days of those high intensity speed work runs, and that you have all of this room in your graph to do the easier, you can get that volume. Like I need the volume,
Hmm.
not necessarily anything else, but I can get that volume and the speed work
Hmm.
and still not put myself at risk for injury. But really visualizing it is the only thing I would show the person the graph. I don't even think I could explain it properly, just
Right.
how much you can get away with at lower paces,
Hmm.
but how productive the fast runs can be.
Right.
Like I'm not just keeping myself from injury. I have gotten faster and I have PR'd,
Hmm.
but I've been running safer and more responsibly, I think.
Right. What are you hoping to gain from this 10K training plan? Do you have a goal in mind or a hope for, you gaining something in your running, whether it's fitness, a new PR, a new understanding of what you could do in training and unlocking maybe that next step and like echelon that you can move into for training. But what are you hoping to gain out of this training plan?
Probably a few things. I would like to PR. That is pretty easy because I haven't done that many 10Ks. This is relatively a new distance for me, but I would like to like running this 10K distance.
Hmm.
I think this is a test for me just to try to push my 5K pace a little bit longer. Not quite, but really close to it. And of course, I want to get to the train or to the starting line not broken and in one piece. I do not want to get hurt from running ever again,
Hmm.
but I still want to improve my pace and improve my race times.
Yeah, absolutely. The final few questions I have for you, the first being uh, if people want to follow along with your running journey, where can they find you? Do you have social media where you post about running and stuff? Where can people kind of keep in tune with that?
I'm on Instagram and my account is bella.runs, Bela dot runs.
And the dot
So
is very important.
The dot is important. Shout out to my daughter at University of Florida and her friends who follow my running, and they call me Bela Dot Runs.
I love that. The second to last question I have is when we revisit you and more through your training plan, do you have a question you'd like to ask yourself and have yourself answer, whether it's a check in on how your training plan is going, something along those lines? Do you have a question you'd like to pose for your future self?
Well, unrelated to training for my Rap River run, I also have a race this weekend at Disney, the Tower of Terror 10 miler, and this will be my 5th time running this race. The race used to be a 13K, and it used to start at 10 o'clock at night, which I absolutely love because it ends at the Tower of Terror in Hollywood Studios, and it's just great. And I'm a daytime runner, a lunchtime runner, or an evening runner. But now they've rescheduled this race to be in the spring and in the morning. And the race starts at 5 a.m. and we're getting on our bus at 3:45 a.m. But I still want to PR, and I don't know if I can do that on only a few hours of sleep. So I guess my question for next time is if I did PR my Tower of Terror race based on all of those factors that are against me on race day.
Right. I feel like the scary part is the wake up for
Yeah.
that run and the alarm clock you have to set. That's enough terror for me. The last wrap up question we have is what questions do you have for us? Is there anything about Stryd, training with Stryd, any other features that you're curious about and you have any questions? We like to be able to turn it and let you ask a question of us if you have any burning questions for us about Stryd in general.
So when choosing a training plan, you have options. You choose your race date and you choose the number of days per week that you want to run. And I believe I chose 5 or 6, I think 6 days a week. And it ended up as a low volume. And then there was a high volume, which is 7 days a week. I think what I would like, because what I'm doing manually in my head and by making calculations based on my running stress balance, a way to increase the volume of my plan, perhaps tell the plan I want to average around 100 miles a month, or say like increase it by 30% or 50%, or plug in a number where it automatically applies it to that whole plan and just press OK and it's done.
Right. Yeah, I can say we do have some great training plan updates in the works right now that the Stryd team is working on, and stuff like that is something that we hear a lot of comments about. But the one thing that I always love to reiterate is that everybody at Stryd is a runner. Everybody at Stryd like runs with stuff. And so when we hear people like yourself talking about the same exact things that we're thinking and trying to improve upon, that is so reassuring that we're in line, not only being runners and working on things that we think other runners would like, but it's super reassuring to know that the things we kind of have in mind to update is forefront in your mind about something you'd like to see too. So I can say that there are some fantastic training plan updates in the works for the future that we're so pumped about and so excited to be able to deliver on in the future. That wraps it up for this episode. I want to thank you so much for taking the time and talking. I feel inspired every single time I sit down to talk to a Stryd user, and I feel like going out the door for a run like immediately every single time. I'm so excited to be able to check in after this weekend and see if you did in fact PR at the very, very early start for the 10 miler. And we're pumped to be able to follow your journey. Again, you plugged your social media and we will drop that in the description and stuff as well. And people can continue to check in on your running. For now, that wraps up this episode. Thanks so much again for coming on.
Thank you, Evan. Nice talking to you.